decimals. In this video, we're going to do a whole bunch of decimal stuff. Place value, rounding, reading them, easy fractions, fractions and decimals, adding and subtracting, multiplying, dividing, and we're going to use the calculator. So join me, Catherine. So what exactly is a decimal number? Well, a decimal number, or decimal, refers to any number written in decimal notation. The first thing we have to do, though, is look at a place value chart to really understand where a decimal fits in our numbers. Hopefully, we all know that in the center here is the decimal point. Everything to the left are integers. Those are really easy to remember because you just think about money. Ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, and so on. Everything to the right of the decimal is a decimal. Decimals start with tenths, hundredths, thousands, 10,000s, and so on. The easy way to know the difference between an integer and a decimal is that decimal words end in THS. There's three types of decimals. The first kind is called a terminating decimal. That's because it terminates or ends. And here's a couple examples. Another type of decimal is called a repeating decimal. And a repeating decimal repeats one or more numbers. We're going to talk about repeating decimals here in just a couple of minutes, but for now, let's just look at a couple examples. You're going to notice at the end there are 3 dots. That means the numbers continue on and on and on the same. Finally, we're going to look at non-terminating and non-repeating decimals. For this one, you need to grab your calculator. Press the pi key on your calculator and write it down. Most of you will get this number, but interestingly enough, pi never terminates and never repeats. And if you're curious how many numbers are in pi, just Google it. You'll be shocked. Place value. Well, we just talked about the place value, but now let's identify numbers in the place value. Let's look at this number first. The first thing I like to do is actually write the number in my little graphic. So what number is in the ones column? That's the 4. How about the tens column? That's the 3. The hundreds column? That's the 2. How about the tenths? That's an 8. And finally, what about the hundredths? Well, that's the 9. All right, it's your turn. I would like you to write this number down and then tell me what numbers are in the ones, thousands, hundreds, tens, and hundredths column. All right, let's see if you're right. Did you get a 9 in the ones column? Good. How about the thousands column? That's the 7. Hundreds is the 1. Tens is the 8. And finally, hundredths is the 0. Hopefully, you didn't get the words hundreds and hundredths mixed up. Reading and writing decimals. There's a couple things that we need to remember for us to read and write decimals. We need to read the decimals to the left of the decimal point as a whole number. Say "and" for the decimal point. Read the digits to the right of the decimal point as a whole number. And then say the place value name of the last digit. Oh my gosh. Well, it's not as hard as it sounds. Let's look at this number. First thing we do is read the digits to the left of the decimal point. 234. We say "and" for the decimal point. Read the digits to the right of the decimal point as a whole number, 89. And then say the place value name of the last digit. Well, the 9 is the last digit, and that's in the hundredths column. So to say this number, we would say 234 and 89 hundredths. Here's one for you to try. Pause the video, say it, and then press play to see if you're right. Okay, let's see how you did. Read the digits to the left of the decimal point. Well, that's 18. Say "and" for the decimal point. Read the digits to the right of the decimal place, 602, and then say the place value name of the last digit. Well, the last digit is a 2, and that's in the thousandths place. So we would say this number as 18 and 602 thousandths. Inequality. Remember, when we talk about inequalities, we're talking about greater than or less than or equal to. So let's look at this first one. For me, I always have to think about money. So would I rather have 80 cents or 50 cents? Yep, I'd rather have 80 cents. That means that 8/10 is larger than 5/10. Let's look at these two numbers. 3 and 24 hundredths, 3 and 27 hundredths. Let's think about money again. Which would you rather have? Well, I'd rather have $3.27, or 3 and 27 hundredths. The other way we could do it is look at the numbers. Sometimes we're going to have a whole string of numbers, and a lot of them are going to be the same. So what I like to do is cross off the numbers that are the same, and then compare the last number that's not the same. Okay, let me show you. So once again, we have 3.24 and 3.27. Well, the 3's, they're the same, so I'm going to cancel them out. The 2's are the same, so I'm going to cancel those out. So now we have a 4 and a 7. Well, they're not the same. But which one's bigger? The 7. Yep. So that means $3.27 is larger. So let's look at these two numbers. We can't quite put this into money, right? Because we don't have 3 decimal places for money. But some of you are going to say, hey, I know 27.767 is greater than 29.76. And you're right. But for the rest of us, we're going to have to start canceling things and then compare in the end. So let's start canceling things out. The 2's are the same, the 9's are the same, the decimal points line up, that's good. The 7's and the 6's. Now all I have left is a blank and a 7. Well, the blank is a 0. So which is bigger, the 7 or the 0? Well, the 7. So that means that 29 and 767 thousandths is larger than 29 and 76 hundredths. I want you to think about this one by yourself for a moment. So pause the video, decide which one's bigger, and then press play to check. All right, let's see how you did. Did you say 1.2135 is larger? Well, let's compare them. Once again, I wrote my numbers out. The 1's are the same, the decimals line up, that's good. The 2's are the same. But then right away, I have 2 different numbers. Which is larger, 0 or 1? Well, the 1 is larger. That means 2.2135 is larger than 1.2086. And no, I'm not going to read those correctly because that's a mouthful. Try this one. Pause the video, then press play to check. All right, let's see how you did. Did you get 15.0078 is larger than 15.0038? Well, let's check it. Once again, I wrote the numbers on top of each other, and I'm going to start canceling things. I'm going to keep going until, hey, they're not the same. Now I have to compare the 3 and the 7. Which is bigger, the 7 or the 3? Well, the 7. So that's why 15.0078 is larger. Next, we're going to go from saying it to fraction it. I think you're going to see how easy this is. Before we get started, do not worry about reducing fractions. We're going to talk about that in the fractions video. Let's just say it to fraction it. Let's look at our first example. What we're going to do is first say it, 7/10. Then we're going to think about this for a second. How do I write 7/10 as a fraction? Well, 7 over 10, 7/10. I know, it's kind of crazy. Let's look at the next one. 0.597. Well, we would say 597 thousandths. On the top, we're going to write 597, and on the bottom, we're going to write thousandths. Let's look at the last one. 0.15. We would say 15 hundredths. Can you guess how we're going to write it? Yup, 15 over 100. That wasn't too bad, right? Do you happen to see a pattern here? Well, if we look at the first one, there's one decimal place. And how many zeros do we have? Yep, 1. In this one, we have 3 decimal places and 3 zeros. That's pretty cool. Let's look at the last one. 2 decimal places and 2 zeros. Wow. Do you see the pattern now? Yep. The denominator will always begin with a 1, and then you'll have the same number of zeros as you do for a decimal place. Let's look at this one. We would say 16 and 3/10. So when we write a fraction, we're going to make this into a mixed number. So the 16 is going to be big. 3/10. Well, 3/10. Well, how would we write that? 3 over 10. Oh, that's not bad. Let's look at this one. 102 and 15 hundredths. Well, 102 is going to be the big part of our fraction. 15 hundredths? Well, that's 15 over 100. Wow! How cool is that? I want you to try these two. Pause the video, try it, and then come back and we're going to work it together. All right, let's see how you did. Well, the first one is 87 and 601 thousandths. Yep, 3 zeros. Cool. Let's look at the next one. 19 and 56 over 100. You're right, because there's 2 decimal places. So we would say 19 and 56 hundredths. Don't freak out. We're going to learn more about fractions in the next video. Fractions to decimals. This time, we're going to use a calculator. So we're going to write each fraction as a decimal. So we need to divide. Let's say I have 9/12. You're going to take 9 divided by 12 on your calculator, and you'll get 75 hundredths. To take 879 over 1,000, we'd actually do what we see, 879 divided by 1,000, and hopefully you get 879 thousandths. Let's try this one. 153 over 391. Well, once again, we're going to do the same thing. 153 divided by 391. In this case, we have a really long decimal. And so, with this answer, we're going to learn how to round after learning a new symbol first. Let's look at the new symbol. For decimals that repeat a number or numbers, we draw a line above the repeating number or numbers. What? Let me say it like this. A line above a number in a decimal tells us it repeats. Let's look at an example. 0.1 with a line over it. Well, since the line is only over the 1 is the only one that repeats. Yeah, kind of funny, I know. But it would look like this. 0.111111 and 3 dots, which remember means it goes on forever. Let's look at another example. 0.256. You're going to notice that 256 has a line over it. That means 256 just repeats on and on and on and on. 256, 256, 256, and so on. In this one, 0.893, only the 9 and 3 have a line above it. That means the 8 is there, but then 93, 93, 93, 93, and so on repeats. We're going to write each fraction using the repeating decimal symbol. So grab your calculator and do 1 divided by 3. You're going to get something like this. Of course, on your calculator, you're not going to get the 3 dots at the end. We just have to assume it goes on forever. To write this with our new symbol, we would say 0.3 with a line above it. Try this one, 25 over 120. Hopefully you get something that looks like that. In this case, it's only the 3 that repeats. So the first numbers, 208, do not have a line over it, just the 3. How about this last one? Put that one in your calculator. Did you get this number? Yup. And if we really look at it, we see that 00498 keeps repeating. So that's why all the numbers have a line over it. Now that we know how to read decimals and we can write them correctly, let's talk about rounding decimals. Let's look at the rules first. First, you're going to underline the place to be rounded. Example, if the question asked to round to the nearest tenths, you underline the number in the tenths place. Look at the number to the right of the one you underlined. Basically, you're going to look next door. If that number is 5 or larger, you're going to add 1 to the underlined number. If it's 4 or smaller, you're going to leave the number alone. Then finally, you're going to change all the numbers to the right of the rounded number blank. Whew, that sounds like a lot of rules. But let me show you how easy it is. Let's round this decimal. It asks us to round it to the nearest thousandths. So the first thing is we have to underline the thousandths place. That's the 4. Now we look at the number to the right. We have to decide, is the 6 5 or larger, or is it 4 or smaller? Well, in this case, 6 is bigger than 5. What we have to do then is add 1 to the underlined number. You're going to notice that the 1, 3, 9, 8 are all the same. All we did was we added 1 to the 4. Then we changed all of the numbers to the right of the one we rounded blank. Yeah, let's try another one. Let's round this one to the nearest hundredths. So once again, we want to underline the hundredths place. We look next door, and now we have to decide, is 1 5 or larger, or is it 4 or smaller? Well, yep, 1 is 4 or smaller. That means we're going to leave the 4 alone, and then everything to the right of the 4 goes away, is just blank. So hopefully you notice that the 1, 0, 1, 2 stay the same. The 4 also stays the same because its neighbor isn't 5 or larger. How about you try this one by yourself? Pause the video, follow the rules, and then press play to check. All right, let's see how you did. So the first thing you want to do is underline the place value. In this case, it's the tenths. You're going to look to the number next door, which is a 2. We have to decide, is 2 5 or larger, or 4 or smaller? In this case, 2 is actually smaller than 5. So we're going to leave the 1 alone. When we round, we end up with 7.1. Remember, everything to the right of the number we rounded just goes away. Try this one by yourself, pause the video, round, and then press play to check. Okay, let's see how you did. Well, the first thing we have to do is underline the place that we're rounding. In this case, it's the ones place. We're going to look to the number next door. Now don't worry that there's a decimal between it. We still look at that number. We have to decide, is 5 5 or larger, or 4 or smaller? Well, in this case, 5 is 5 or larger. So that means we have to round up the 8 to a 9. You're going to notice that the 6 and 7 stay the same. The 8 gets rounded up, and then everything else just goes blank or goes away. Cool! Think about this one. Pause the video, round the price to the nearest dollar, then press play to check. All right, let's see how you did. Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to underline the dollar amount. That's the 8. Next, we look to the number next door, which is a 9. We have to decide, is 9 5 or larger, or is it 4 or smaller? Well, in this case, 9 is 5 or larger. So we're going to actually add 1 to the 8. So $28.93 rounds up to $29. Now don't freak out. You can also write it like this, $29. Adding and subtracting. This is where you're going to pull out your calculator. I want you to try these 6 by yourself. Pause the video, find the answers, then press play to check. Hopefully you get these as your answers when you use the calculator. If you don't, double check that you press the correct numbers and put the decimal place in the right place. Let's look at these two. For the first one, we want to find the perimeter of the notebook. Perimeter is when we add all the sides together. So in this case, we're going to take 11 inches plus plus 8.5 inches plus 11 inches plus 8.5 inches. Put it on your calculator, and what'd you get? Yep, 39 inches. Let's look at this arrow. We want to find the length of the shaft. The shaft is the center part. Well, we know that the feather is 6.3 inches, and we know that the arrow is 2.1 inches, and the whole feather is 17 inches. What do you think? Well, if you said subtract, you're right. We're going to take the whole length, the whole feather, the 17 inches. We're going to minus the feather part, minus the arrow part, and that will give us the shaft. 17 minus 6.3 minus 2.1, yep, 8.6 inches. Let's talk about multiplying and dividing. We're going to do two different things for this section. We're going to use the calculator to find the actual answer, and then we're going to round the number after multiplying or dividing on the calculator. Let me show you what I mean. First, we're going to find the actual answer. Then, we're going to round each number or answer to the nearest tenths. So on your calculator, take 5.13 times 0.4, or 5 13/100ths times 4 tenths. You should get 2 and 52 thousandths. Try the next one. Is this what you get? 7.0455? Cool. What about the last one? 0.3375. Great. Next, we're going to round each of these answers, or products, to the nearest tenths. So how would you round the first product to the nearest tenths? Did you get 2.1? You are correct. You would underline the 0, look next door. Since 5 is 5 or larger, yep, you're going to add 1 to the 0. What about the next one? Did you get 7.0 or just 7? You are correct again. We would underline the 0 because that's the tenths place. Then we look next door to the 4. Well, 4 is 4 or smaller, so we would just leave the underlined place alone. Try the last one. Let's see how you did. Did you get 0.3? You are correct. Once again, we underlined the first 3 because that's the tenths place. We look next door to the second 3. Well, 3 is 4 or smaller, so we just leave our underlined number alone. Great! Let's look at division. We're going to do the same thing again. So I want you to find the actual answer first. Pause the video, find the answers, then press play to make sure you're correct. Let's see how you did. Did you get these answers? Awesome! Now, we need to round each of these to the nearest tenths. So what do you think the first one would be rounded? Well, did you underline the 9, look next door, and realize, well, 3 is 4 or smaller. So 3 and 93/100ths rounded is 4.0. What about the next one? Did you get 17 and 5/10ths? Great. Remember, we don't care about the underlined number. We just care about the number next door. Since 1 is 4 or smaller, we leave the 5 alone. Let's look at the last one. Now this one may seem a little tricky, but since there's not another number to the right of the one we underlined, it just stays the same. So let's look at this chocolate bar. This is a 4.4 ounce bar of chocolate. When you open a chocolate bar, you're going to notice that you can break them up into pieces. So we decide we're going to divide this large bar into 1.1 ounce bars. That means we're going to break it apart. Well, how many will we get? What do you think we'll have to do? Did you say divide? You are correct. So what's 4.4, the whole bar, divided by the little pieces we want? Well, we get 4. So we'd be able to share with 4 friends. Or just 1 friend, where you get to keep 3 of the pieces and you give 1 piece to your friend. That was supposed to be funny. Let's look at the laundry detergent. According to the label, we can get 66 loads in a 23 ounce bottle. Well, how much will you use per load rounded to the nearest tenths? What do you guess? We're going to need to take the 66 loads and divide it by 23 ounces. That means that every load is only 2.9 ounces. That's really small. Now think about this. Do you use the whole cap when you use laundry soap? Actually, you're only supposed to use a little bit. Here's the self-quiz. What I want you to do is I want you to pause the video, go through the quiz, and then press play to check. All right, let's see how you did. The hundreds place is 0, the tenths place is 1, the tens place is 9, thousandths place is the 5, and finally the hundredths place is the 8. For number 2, did you get greater than? What about number 3? Yep, 21.8175 is larger than 21.8075. For number 4, you're asked to round 1,729 and 567 ten-thousandths. So for the first one, round to the nearest thousandths. Did you get 1,729 and 57 thousandths? Good job. What about number 5? That's just 1,700. What about number 6? Yep, 1,729 and 1/10. Number 7, you're asked to rewrite 15 and 7/10 as a fraction. Did you get 15 and 7/10? What about number 8, 201 and 791 thousandths? 201 and 791 thousandths. Number 9, 28.851. Number 10, 19 and 59 hundredths. Number 11, $29.18. Number 12, 110 and 17 hundredths. Number 13, 131.208515. Number 14, 7.7495. For number 15 and 16, I ask you to round to the nearest tenths. So when you get your answer, you were to round to the nearest tenths, just like we had been doing. Did you get 14.0 for 15? And then for 16, 1.2. Great! Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. And remember to practice, practice, practice. You're not going to get good at any math unless you practice.